Ryuta returned from the dungeon and had dinner with Emily and Celeste, enjoying a feast that seemed never-ending, with dishes even Emily hadn't managed to serve yet. Ryuta thought Emily had been working even harder since her workload had decreased. Celeste praised Ryuta for completing all his tasks beforehand, but that still didn't allow Sekiro to claim the Selen dungeon directly. Once a decision was made, everything would come to an end, and they could return to Sekiro without any worries. Celeste hoped for that end as well. Emily then brought out a freshly baked dessert, a cake that left Ryuta baffled about how she had obtained or made it, a question Celeste echoed. Emily simply stated that it was baked over an open fire, leaving Ryuta and Celeste puzzled. To their amazement, Emily had also prepared ice cream as another dessert. The bright morning sun woke Ryuta from his slumber, and he saw Celeste already starting to burn trash. However, due to overexertion from using her magic continuously, Celeste eventually collapsed, prompting Ryuta to rush to her aid, administering healing bullets. In Ryuta's embrace, after the healing bullets had revived her, Celeste immediately pushed Ryuta away, feeling embarrassed and her heart racing, signaling her growing affection for him. She then slapped herself for being too nervous and unprepared for the situation. Ryuta questioned why Celeste used magic that drained her so much for burning relatively little trash. Celeste, who could only use level 3 Inferno magic, couldn't even learn magic of a lower level. Soon, people from the market area approached Emily's tent, bringing piles of trash to burn. They returned to their area to collect the remaining trash. The towering piles of trash frustrated Ryuta because it seemed never-ending. Celeste explained that the trash had become uncontrollable because the Dungeon Master had arrived in Selen. Dungeon Masters, also known as dungeon bosses, only appeared every few months. Since dungeon bosses, including very powerful and dangerous monsters, prevented adventurers from entering the dungeon temporarily, they had to focus on eating and dealing with the ever-mounting trash. Emily received information that a joint force from 2 cities would unite to fight the dungeon boss, and she believed that things would return to normal soon. Ryuta advised Celeste to rest while he took care of the remaining trash piles. Unable to bear seeing Celeste push herself so hard, he asked Emily to keep her company inside the tent while he sorted out the remaining trash. The next day, instead of decreasing, the pile of garbage continued to grow, forcing Ryuta to work even harder to handle the increasingly uncontrollable mess. Emily, who had provided information that they had formed a team to eradicate the dungeon boss, prompted Ryuta to take the initiative to assess the situation in front of the dungeon door. This would bring relief to Celeste if they could defeat the dungeon master quickly. Ryuta then went to check the situation, reminding Celeste not to overexert herself in dealing with the mounting trash. Celeste was briefly puzzled by why Ryuta was so kind to her, which led Emily to respond that Ryuta was indeed that way, always offering assistance to those in need because he couldn't ignore it, and it had happened before in Sekiro. Ryuta, upon arriving at Sekiro's central tent, encountered the Neptune group, seemingly assigned to hunt down the dungeon master promptly. However, an issue arose because not just anyone could join the joint force with specific requirements. Moreover, Hetero itself would not send anyone to join as they intended to keep the dungeon master in Selen for an extended period to seize Selen, which had fallen into Sekiro's hands first. The prolonged presence of the dungeon master in the dungeon would lead to item drops and the dungeon's ecosystem undergoing significant changes over time, something Hetero would exploit fully if it occurred. Ryuta, not one to sit idly by, tried to join in, but Duke adamantly refused to allow him to participate. This prompted Ryuta to take the initiative to find volunteers willing to collaborate. While searching for potential members, most of them were merely adventurers taking advantage of the tax-free loot from the Selen dungeon drops, and all the adventurers there were particularly ambitious about the dungeon master's appearance. When Ryuta returned, Emily was ready to join him in defeating the dungeon master, as they were one person short and she would try to find another. Then Celeste appeared, ready to assist Ryuta in his mission to defeat the dungeon master. With no one else available to manage the towering trash, Ryuta had to find someone to handle it. However, as Eugene was Celeste's brother, he agreed to help burn the pile of garbage until nothing remained, allowing Ryuta to focus on defeating the dungeon master. Emily agreed to let them take care of the remaining garbage. Celeste then showed Ryuta her abilities, proving that she could assist him. However, due to her poor item drop ability, she wouldn't be the one to finish off the dungeon master. Ryota accepted Celeste's offer as she intended to help him and make it back to Sekiro. They entered the first floor Cellin dungeon, and all the monsters inside were nowhere to be seen due to the dungeon master's effects that influenced the habitat of the monsters within. As its effects could result in item scarcity, Emily suggested quickly defeating the dungeon master before its effects spread throughout the dungeon floor. Finally, the dungeon master appeared in the form of a two-horned horse named Bicorn. Emily immediately attacked Bicorn, but it was protected by a barrier that could deflect physical attacks. Celeste then unleashed her Inferno magic, immobilizing Bicorn, allowing Ryota to fire a combined bullet that eventually shattered the barrier. When Emily tried to strike Bicorn with her large hammer, Ryota's attempt to shoot Bicorn led to the recreation of the same barrier. However, it would deplete a significant amount of ammunition and Celeste's energy if used repeatedly just to break the barrier. Nevertheless, Bicorn's persistent use of its barrier forced them to work tirelessly, and it began to reduce Bicorn's HP by half. When Emily tried to attack, Bicorn suddenly unleashed a negative magic that could reduce the group's stats by up to 2 levels, except for HP and strength. Emily didn't feel much of an impact from this, but Celeste, on the other hand, was nearly drained of her energy due to the negative effects of Bicorn. Ryota struggled to make the right decision, but for the time being, instructed Emily to protect Celeste from Bicorn's attacks, while he would try any means to defeat it. Celeste felt that she was only a hindrance to Ryota because of her limited energy, but Ryota's different attitude from those around him made her realize that there was someone as kind as him who accepted her without complaints. She felt extremely happy to be valued. This newfound determination caused Celeste to rise and use her Inferno magic once more, while Emily tossed her weapon to Ryota, enabling their final attack to defeat Bicorn with a single strike. After Bicorn was defeated, Celeste collapsed from pushing herself too hard, prompting Ryota to quickly check on her condition. When she regained consciousness, she thanked Celeste for her help until the end and gave her the item drop from Bicorn as a token of gratitude for her assistance. Perhaps without Celeste's help, Emily and Ryota would have struggled immensely against Bicorn. Emily agreed to give the item drop to Celeste, acknowledging her contribution in helping identify Bicorn's weaknesses. This left Celeste bewildered and initially hesitant to accept it, but after Emily and Ryota discussed and decided to give it to her, she realized that the item drop from Bicorn would grant her the ability to use level 1 and 2 magic spells. Emily thanked her for her assistance and her dedicated effort. Overwhelmed with happiness, Celeste burst into tears at the recognition of her efforts and the gift from Ryota. In the evening, Ryota's group went to meet with Duke and reported that they had defeated Bicorn. Duke was very surprised by what Ryota conveyed, as he had successfully fulfilled his duties as an adventurer. Eventually, Duke decided to inform the other adventurers that Ryota's group had defeated Bicorn and asked them to assess the dungeon situation, particularly regarding any ecological changes. 2 women from the Neptune group congratulated Ryota for successfully defeating Bicorn and expressed how lucky they were to have reliable companions. On the other hand, Neptune was currently threatening the leader of the Hetero Association for spreading unpleasant rumors about them. The next morning, when Celeste saw the remaining trash, she tried using a level 1 spell and surprisingly succeeded, thanks to the item drop from Bicorn. Ryota then took the initiative to invite Celeste to go to the city of Sekiro, and on the other hand, he asked to be taken along with them to Sekiro. Ryota then considered forming his own group with Emily and Celeste as members.